Happy Thursday. Welcome back to Cook with Kris. For those of you who don't yet know who I am, I'm Kristen Dovniak. I'm a holistic health coach and a trained chef and a mama of two, and I love sharing recipes that are delicious, nourishing, and balanced. And I also love to talk about creating balanced meals as a whole. And today, what I want to share with you guys is how to create a salad that is really satisfying. So it's delicious, it's also going to hold you over, and it's really going to satisfy both your body and your taste buds. So I'm also, as we talk about this, going to share with you my very favorite autumn kale salad. So it's going to be a massaged kale salad with delicata squash. If you've never tried delicata squash, it is my favorite. It is so, so good. Pomegranates and pecans. So as we wait for our friends to hop on, I'm gonna go ahead and share with you what you're gonna need for this salad. So if you're watching this later, you can go ahead and pause this and go and grab your ingredients and cook along with me if you'd like, or you can make this later. So let me share with you what we're gonna need for this, and we'll get going, and I will share with you exactly how to create a satisfying salad. So what you're gonna need for the autumn kale, roasted squash, and pomegranate salad. Well, most of the things that I just shared with you. Number one, you're gonna need some sort of a squash. I love delicata squash. This is my favorite for a few reasons. Number one, it cooks up really fast. So as you see, I'm gonna cook this up with you guys here. I'm gonna roast it up. You can cook it with the skin on. You can eat the skin. I already washed mine, so I recommend washing it ahead of time, but you can eat the skin. The skin gets really soft. It's not too sweet and not too savory either. So it has this really delicious flavor to it. It cooks up really fast. You can eat the skin. So it's very easy to prepare. So you're gonna need some sort of a squash. You're gonna need about one large bunch of kale chopped up, which I did ahead of time, just in the interest of time. You're gonna need about half of a pomegranate's worth of pomegranate arils. So I already arilled my pomegranates. I can share with you my technique if you guys are curious. But basically, you can also buy the pre-seeded pomegranates, arils or pomegranate seeds. But basically I take it, I cut it into quarters, and I put it in water, and that is how I remove the seeds of the pomegranate. It's a lot less messy than trying to do it over a cutting board and trying to like dig them out with your hands, doing it over water. So that's what I did ahead of time. You're also gonna need some pecans. If you don't eat pecans, you can do another nut, but the nut, as I will share, creates a really satisfying crunch to it and some healthy fats in there as well. And then you're gonna need a few ingredients for the dressing. Oh, goat cheese. I've got some goat cheese over here. I love a delicious and creamy goat cheese. If you're dairy free, you can leave the goat cheese out, but I love goat cheese, or you could also do feta as well. That'll work, but you want some sort of a goat cheese. And for the dressing ingredients, oh my gosh, you guys, I love making homemade salad dressings because they're so easy and so delicious, and they stay for a while in the fridge as well. So you're gonna need some sort of a neutral oil. You can use olive oil, that's what I'm using today. Avocado oil works really well as well. I am going to be using white balsamic vinegar. I love white balsamic. It is like the dark balsamic, but just a little bit lighter. So if you've never tried it before, just think of it as a slightly lighter balsamic dressing, vinegar I mean. And the oven's singing. The oven is preheated. So you could also use apple cider vinegar as well if you don't have white balsamic vinegar. You could use regular balsamic vinegar, but it'll obviously be a little bit darker and a little bit stronger. I wouldn't use white vinegar. I would use either white balsamic or apple cider vinegar. Both of those will work. You're also gonna use some orange juice. You can use fresh squeezed orange juice. I'm just using, organic orange juice. Whatever kind you've got. You also are gonna need a little bit of honey. My honey's sticky, so it's in a bag. But you need some sort of a honey, or you could use maple syrup as well if you don't do honey. This whole recipe is vegetarian. You can add your protein to it after if you would like. And if you're gonna serve this as a side, obviously you want some sort of a protein to make it a meal. We will talk a little bit more about that as well. You're gonna need some Dijon mustard. I prefer the grainy Dijon. This is from Trader Joe's, but you can use just regular Dijon as well if you don't like texture. My kids tend to not love the texture to it. They don't mind when it's massaged into the kale, but typically they prefer the smooth Dijon, so it's totally up to you. You're gonna need some cinnamon, some cumin, and some sea salt. I use real salt, it's what I prefer. I like the flavor. So that's all you're gonna need. Handful of ingredients, nothing crazy. Here's what we're gonna do together today. I'm gonna start by cutting up this delicata squash and chatting with you as we cut up the squash. I'm gonna go ahead and roast the squash, and you will see how quickly the squash roasts up. And then we are going to make the rest of the ingredients. And while we do that, we're gonna chat about how to create a satisfying salad. So in order to cut your delicata squash, Super easy. They're very small. They're all about this size. Oh my gosh. Sam says, I enjoy your making a salad right now, and I'm watching this making ginger snap cookies. Hey, it is all about balance. I love me some ginger snap cookies too. But today we're doing a salad. All right, so I'm gonna cut just a little bit of the top off because we do not need that. Okay, and yeah, squash is oftentimes hard to cut. I don't recommend doing what a lot of people do with things like butternut squash and spaghetti squash and microwaving it for like 30 seconds or a minute ahead of time, only because it will turn to mush because it cooks up so fast. So for this, get yourself a strong knife and make sure you're holding the knife correctly. I need to like roll up my sleeves here for this. So I always teach this, but when you hold your knife, you wanna make sure to choke it. So thumb on one side, forefinger on the other side. So you have a nice sturdy grip with your knife. Claw, when my daughter comes on with me and she helps me teach my cooking classes, she always says la claw, like in Toy Story. Okay, so you're gonna hold your claw and you are going to go ahead and give it a nice big slice all the way down on the cutting board. That's it. Once it is in half, that's almost everything you need to do. You could actually roast it like this if you wanted to. I don't have a bowl. I need a bowl. 1 second. But you're gonna scoop out the center here. I'm gonna grab a bowl for my scraps. Okay, so we're gonna scoop out the center here, just with a spoon, very easy. Same thing you do with like butternut squash or spaghetti squash as well. Because we are gonna be slicing this into even slices. There you go. And we're gonna do the other side. I have a lot of things around me and I'm afraid I'm gonna like elbow my kale and then we'll have a kale disaster. All right, this is all we're gonna do for the squash. So let's talk a little bit as I cut up this squash, how to create a satisfying salad. Because I think many of us, I love a good salad, but I know for years and years, I would make salads at home and I would eat them and I'd be like, this is good, but this is not like the salads I get at a restaurant. So cutting the squash, we're just gonna do thin slices, maybe like 1/4 to 1/2 inch. These are not as good as the salads I get at restaurants, and these just don't feel very satisfying. You might eat the salad and then you feel like you need to eat a whole other meal after, even if you're trying to make that a meal salad. So when it comes to creating a satisfying salad, we have to first talk about what makes food satisfying. So there's 2 parts to satisfaction, okay? There is our physical satisfaction, so what makes us satiated, and that's part of what makes a satisfying salad. And then there is sensory satisfaction, so taste buds. So a couple weeks ago, I talked to you guys about the flavor factors. So there's 3 factors that influence flavor when it comes to food. Cutting this very slowly, you guys, because I'm looking at you and I don't want to cut my fingers off. You can cut it faster if you are able to. And you're not staring at someone while you're doing it. So I talked about the 3 flavor factors. So there are 3 factors that influence the flavor of food: taste, texture, and temperature. Last week I talked about the different elements of taste. So sweet, salty, bitter, sour, and umami. So 5 elements of taste. The best dishes are the ones that include several, not always all, but several of the different elements of taste. When they do, taking our pan here, just any sort of baking sheet, and we're gonna spread out our delicata squash evenly. When the dishes have several of the different elements of taste as well as the different flavor factors, they are most satisfying to our taste buds because they're interesting. And that's what our taste buds love. Our taste buds love variety and balance. So if everything you're eating, okay, I've got a big bunch of kale here. If I were to just eat a bunch of kale by itself, it would be very bitter and very boring because it all tastes the same. When you add some more variety to whatever you are eating, so that's variety in taste, in texture, and oftentimes in temperature as well, it adds interest and it makes it more satisfying. Satisfaction also, like I said, comes from the actual ingredients in the food, and we'll talk about that a little bit more later. But the goal here, when you are creating a salad, is to create enough interest that your taste buds are excited as you're eating it. That is why we encounter something called sensory specific satiety, which is a mouthful to say, oil. when we are eating a food and it all kind of tastes the same, eventually we get bored eating it. This is why, I talk a lot about intuitive eating. This is why, as intuitive eaters, we don't eat the same thing over and over and over again. A lot of women, as they are on their journey to becoming a balanced eater and to eat intuitively, they're so afraid that if they give up, dieting or restricting their food intake, that they are going to just eat brownies all day, every day. But the truth is that if you did eat brownies all day, every day, you would get bored of them and you wouldn't want them anymore. Same thing happens when we're eating a dish that has all of the same flavors or all of the same textures. We want variety, we want balance. And so that's taste, texture, and temperature. And the same thing goes for a satisfying salad. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to just toss these together with the oil. I'm gonna put it in the oven for about 20 minutes. So the goal here is that I don't babble so much that I'm still talking when the squash is done. So this salad is a great representation of having a variety of taste, texture, and temperature in a salad to create that interest to make your salad satisfying. The reason why the salads that you eat when you go to a restaurant, unless you're just getting like the garden salad, are oftentimes more satisfying than the ones we get at home, is typically because there is variety in taste, texture, and temperature. Sometimes temperature, not always temperature, but usually taste and texture. And there are also several elements of flavor in there as well. So your taste buds are interested. And then there is oftentimes enough of the ingredients that also help to satiate us as well. And again, we'll talk about that in a minute, because we want the taste, the sensory satisfaction, and we also want the satiation from the food. Oftentimes when we're trying to live healthy lives, we focus just on what is gonna fill me up. But if we're not actually satisfied, if we're not actually enjoying the food that we're eating, if we're not enjoying the flavor of the food that we're eating or deriving any pleasure from the food that we're eating, that's why we stop, our efforts to eat more real whole foods or to really implement healthy living practices. If it's boring, if it doesn't taste good, it's not gonna last. So it's really important that the food that we eat, even if it is real whole foods, it should be satisfying and delicious. And that's what I'm here to share with you. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these in there. All right. And we are timing it. Because if we don't time it, we're gonna forget. So at home, I have an Alexa Dot, or like the Amazon Dot, and we talk a lot. She has a lot of timers. Actually, the other day, I'm gonna go ahead and make this salad dressing here. We're gonna need our oil, orange juice, vinegar, honey, and then also our Dijon mustard, but I've run out of space. So we're gonna start with what we got over here. The other day I was like, Alexa, put a timer on. And then I wanted to switch the time. So I was like, Alexa, switch the time for the timer. And she was like, which of the timers do you want me to switch? And I was like, how many timers do I have, Alexa? She's like, you have 12 timers. I'm like, well, at least I'm using it. Okay, so we've got our Delicata squash in the oven. The Delicata squash is going to provide some mouthfeel, so some texture. So it has a little bit of a creaminess to it, as well as a little bit of a sweetness to it, and a bite that's a little bit different than the texture and the taste of the kale, the pomegranates, the pecans, and the goat cheese is actually in front of me right now. So when you are creating a salad and you want that salad to be satisfying, you want to start first and foremost with a base. By the way, guys, as I make this dressing, this whole recipe is going to be in my stories after this. So I'm doing about 1/3 of a cup. There are measurements on I don't measure a ton, but there are measurements on my mason jar. About 1/3 of a cup, 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of oil here. When you're creating a satisfying salad, you want to start with some sort of a base. Here's what's important. Couple tablespoons. Okay, here's what's important, you guys. And I have my measuring cup over here. You need to choose a base you like, or choose a way of eating the base that you like. If you hate romaine lettuce and you try and create a salad with romaine lettuce, that's not going to be satisfying. I know it seems like that's not rocket science, Kris. Of course it's not going to be satisfying. But how many times have you tried to follow a recipe and gone, oh, the recipe calls for arugula, but I hate arugula. I love arugula. Or kale. Okay, not everyone likes raw kale, but how can we make raw kale delicious? This is how I'm showing you today. It's called massaging it. Yes, if you've never heard of that, you're like, what in the world? You will see. It's a beautiful experience. It's really delicious. So we're taking the kale and we're transforming it from something that's kind of bitter and kind of like tough to chew to something that almost has like a cooked texture to it. And the sweetness from the dressing and the texture of the fat are going to help to balance out the bitter flavor and the tough texture of the kale. So number one, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent. Number one, choose a base that you actually like or turn the base into something that you actually like. Something that that most chefs do in restaurants, okay? And if you don't do this at home, this is gonna be a game changer for you. Making sure I'm sticking with my measurements. Oh, and I need my honey. Something most chefs do at restaurants is, I need to measure. I'm just, making you guys like sit with bated breath. Like, what do? They toss the dressing with, you can do 1 or 2 tablespoons depending on how sweet you want it, depending on how much you want to counter the bitterness of the kale. They toss the actual base with the dressing before they serve it. Toss the base with the dressing and then go ahead and put your toppings on. That's all you need. I just gave you everything. That's all you need to know. No. There's a little bit more to it. I'm just whisking this and I'm gonna add a pinch of salt and a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of cumin. Love the combination of cinnamon and cumin. If you've never tried it, it's delicious on everything from roasted vegetables to salad dressing. So toss your base with the dressing ahead of time. Now, obviously, if you are not gonna serve it right away and you are like prepping this ahead, you wanna wait to toss it with the dressing. But try tossing your base with the dressing before you put it on the table. It is a game changer, I promise. Because you want the base to be coated in the dressing. You don't just want to toss the dressing on top. You want to actually taste the flavor of the dressing. And the purpose of the dressing is to balance out the flavor of greens, which are more often than not, unless you're using like, I'm doing a little bit more cinnamon. Unless you're using like butter lettuce, they're typically a little bit bitter. And so using a dressing that has a little bit of sweetness to it or some sourness to it is going to counter that bitter flavor. So number one, start with a base you actually love. Number two, start with a dressing you love. You might like different types of dressings. I like different types of dressings. Sometimes I like a vinaigrette. By the way, you have to whisk this really good. It will not stay like this. It will separate in the fridge later because we're probably not going to use all of this. That's okay. Because I am using a hearty green, I can dress this ahead of time and it is still going to be delicious. If this were romaine or arugula or any sort of baby green, I would not dress this now. This is kale, collards, or Swiss chard only. Okay, start with the base you love. Start with a dressing you actually love. And your dressing should complement the other ingredients on the salad. So it's your choice. You can choose the salad ingredients and then choose the dressing to complement the salad. If you have a base and a dressing in mind, then you want the ingredients to complement that, okay? Think balance, think complementary. So we're gonna go ahead now and we're gonna give this kale a little bit of a massage. So Delicata squash is in the oven. We've made our salad dressing, we whisked it up together. I didn't even taste it, which is something I tell all of my cooking class students, but I've made this dressing so many times. You guys saw me add a little bit more cumin and a little bit more cinnamon. I'm gonna taste it. It's good. You can make it sweeter. You could add more orange juice to it. This is a little bit more on the honey and vinegar side of things. And there's also quite a bit of oil in there as well. If you want it more orangey, you can add a little bit more orange juice. If you wanted it a little bit more Dijon-y, you could add some more Dijon mustard. But we're gonna stick with this for now. Here's how we're gonna massage our kale. I have a cut on my finger, so I'm gonna try and avoid using this hand, but we are literally going to massage the dressing into the kale until The kale appears as though it's cooked. Now, it's kale, guys. You want to cut it up, first of all, cut it into bite-sized pieces. It is not going to get mushy unless it's been in the fridge dressed for some time. So go for it. Massage the kale. What you're going to be doing is breaking down some of the fibers in that kale, and you are adding, remember I said taste, texture, temperature? Texture. You are adding some mouthfeel to the kale, a more pleasant mouthfeel to the kale by massaging it with some sort of a fat. Fat is actually a really, really important ingredient. I mean, it's obviously there's a variety of different types of fats. You could be talking about avocado, you could be talking about oil, you could be talking about nuts. But fat provides a really important mouthfeel when it comes to the food that we're eating. When a food is completely void of fat, so think of like steamed broccoli and chicken breast and plain rice. There's something missing from that, right? You need a little something on top of that to bring in some of the really satisfying aspects to it, a satisfying aspect. So you could add some salt on top of that, and that's going to add some saltiness to it, but it's still going to feel like it's missing something for the most part. What if you just added a little bit of butter to the broccoli or to the rice? Instantly makes it a little bit more satisfying. Not only because you added the fat for satiation, for physical fullness, but because that is what is appealing to our taste buds. So we want to add a little bit of fat to whatever we're cooking. So whether you're cooking with it or it's a salad, to really provide some of that mouthfeel. So as you can see, I am treating my kale very well, giving my kale a little bit of a massage. Now, here's the deal. I put a little bit of salt, a tiny pinch of salt in the salad dressing. I'm going to taste the kale and see if the kale might need a little bit of salt as well. Because remember, we're thinking about balancing flavors. We already did that when we made the salad dressing. So we had some sweet in there from the honey and the orange juice. We had some sour in there from the vinegar and a little bit from the Dijon mustard. We also had that fatty in a good way. You know what? It's interesting that I say fatty in a good way because I don't think that high-fat foods are bad. But I think as a society, we do. And so that was just like an instant response where I'm like, oh, in a good way. It is a good way. It makes your food taste and more delicious. And it helps you stay full. So I'm going to taste it. The other thing, what I meant to say, is the other thing that will help to balance it out is a little bit of salt. I don't want you guys to be afraid of salt. Most of the extra sodium that we don't need comes from processed foods, not salting your food. That's really tasty. I'm going to add a little bit of salt to it. And by the way, we're talking about complementary flavors. Salt is going to bring out the sweetness in this. And it also counteracts sour and bitter just a little bit. It's my salad, so I can double dip. All it needs. So if at this point, you're tasting it, you add a little bit more salt and you're like, it's still a little bitter for my taste. Add a little bit more orange juice or add a little bit more honey, whichever flavor that you would prefer. I'm gonna go and put this aside for just a second, grab a paper towel for my hands, and we're gonna talk about the other ingredients. Actually, I'll leave it here, and we'll grab a paper towel and we'll talk about the other ingredients that go on top. So you're gonna start with the base. We've got our base of kale. You're gonna choose a base that you actually enjoy eating, and then you're gonna choose a dressing that you actually enjoy. If you like a creamy dressing, choose a creamy dressing. If you like a vinaigrette, choose a vinaigrette. The key here is that the salad is not going to be satisfying if you choose what you think is the healthy option. I believe healthy is balance, and satisfaction is really important to our balanced eating because when we are eating the food we enjoy, we're less likely to overeat it because we're going to eat just enough because we get that hit the spot feeling sooner than if we're just eating food because we think we should or because this is the amount we should eat. That hit the spot feeling, that's satisfaction. So when you have the right balance of ingredients in your dish and when you're making sure that you're including a variety of food groups, that's how you feel satisfied from your food. And that is one of the biggest things to preventing overeating because we're satisfied on a regular basis. So we've got our massage kale. We've started with a base that we love and a dressing that we love. Now let's start adding some toppings. Okay, we want something that's going to be a different taste or texture than what we've got here. Remember, we already added that dressing, so a little bit of fat for texture and a little bit of sweetness and sourness in the dressing. So what else do we want to add on top? Well, kale is still kind of bitter. I love adding pomegranates. Pomegranates are my favorite fall fruit. Oh my goodness. If you guys haven't tried them, they're so tasty. They're these like little beautiful little jewels. And they are a little sweet, just a little bit sour, and they are beautiful on top of a salad because they add a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of sourness. But if you've ever tried a pomegranate, it also adds a lovely texture to it. And we know that the greens, whatever kind of greens we're using, are pretty soft and don't have a ton of texture to them. So let's counteract that texture. So we want something that has some texture to it. So this is any sort of raw veggies or raw fruits. So we're gonna add that to the top. So any sort of salad you're making, most of the time you're gonna want some sort of a raw veggie or a raw fruit for two purposes: the texture and then the flavor. So we're gonna add a little bit of that on top. So now what do we have? All right, so you're going, okay, I've got my base, I've got my dressing, I'm gonna add some sort of a fruit or a vegetable on top. If it's a fruit, well then you added something sweet. If it's a vegetable, it depends on what kind of vegetable you add to it, what kind of flavor that's going to impart. So if you add cucumbers, that's cooling and fresh and crisp. If you add tomatoes, tomatoes are a little bit sour. So your goal here is literally just to balance it out. And you can taste as you go and decide what ingredients really taste well together and what really complements each other. So my favorite book on this is called The Flavor Bible. You can get it on Amazon. I've been using it for a decade. I graduated from culinary school a decade ago in September, and the one thing other than my knives that I still have with me and my knowledge from culinary school is the Flavor Bible. It is amazing. It's an amazing gift. It's going to be on the Healthy Balance Mama gift guide that's coming out not next week, the week after next. So you can stay tuned for that. But you can go on Amazon and get it now. Get yourself an early Christmas present or get it for the foodie in your life. It's awesome. Basically what it does is it takes you on a journey. It takes you on a journey. So if you have a cuisine that you want to make, it shows you all the ingredients that go together in that cuisine. Or if you have an ingredient like, say, pomegranate, you can go and it'll tell you that pomegranate goes really well with things like orange and cinnamon and something like, so it'll tell you the type of ingredients that go together. So that's a really great way to start to understand what ingredients really go well together. But let's go back to our salad we're making today. You start with a base that you love, start with a dressing you love, add something that is something crisp. So typically this is a raw fruit or a raw vegetables. If it's fruit, you already added something sweet to it. So this can be fresh fruit, this can be dried fruit. If your dressing is extra sweet, you might not want something sweet on top of your salad. You don't have to have something sweet on top of your salad, but if your salad is overall very savory, it is nice to have a little something sweet, like a sweet dressing or a fruit or a dried fruit on top of that to add some balance to it. Especially if it's a creamy dressing, it can be really helpful to add a little bit of fruit on top of there as well. I know it sounds weird, but it is very, very delicious, I promise. I wouldn't do like Caesar with fruit, but for the most part, it does help to balance it out. So now we have a salad that's got a little bit of the bitterness from the kale. We've got a little bit of the sweetness from the pomegranate. So there's a couple different textures going there. You want to make sure your salad also has a variety of textures to it. So what is going to add another texture to it? Maybe something that's different than what we have now. We have that like slightly, I don't even know how you describe this, like sweet and like in my head, I'm like poppy, sweet and poppy. Pomegranate. Let's add something a little bit crunchy. So depending on the salad you're making, this could be something like tortilla strips. If you're making a more savory, kind of maybe Southwest style salad. For this salad, it's a little bit more sweet and savory, and so I'm gonna use some chopped nuts. Nuts are a great addition to your salad. If your salad has nothing crunchy on top of it, notice pretty much every salad in a restaurant has something crunchy on it. That variety of textures is something that is going to make that salad, I'm just gonna chop these up, more satisfying. So croutons, chopped nuts, whether they're regular nuts or candied nuts, tortilla strips, notice, or seeds are also a great option too. Something a little bit crunchy is gonna make your salad more satisfying. So we're gonna add some sort of a base, some sort of a green. This could also be a grain if you wanted to do a grain as well, like a quinoa salad. Some sort of a neutral base. Add a dressing you love. Add some sort of a raw fruit or veggie. You could do a variety of these as well. Something crunchy on top is going to add some texture to it. Really delicious. We're going to go ahead and add a big handful of pecans to this. By the way, you want to make sure that the amount of ingredients you're adding to your salad is relative to the size of the salad you're creating. So if you're creating just a bowl-sized salad for yourself for lunch, and you add like 3/4 lettuce and like 2 slices of chicken and like a tomato, like a tiny tomato on top, it's gonna feel a little bit imbalanced. So I'm actually gonna add the rest of these pecans because why not? You can always buy more. Because you wanna make sure that, you know, for me, I like to just kind of divide the toppings up and go, okay, about an even amount of each one of the toppings goes on top of the salad. That's typically what I do. So we've got our base, we've got our dressing, we have some raw fruit or veggies, we've got our something crunchy on top, and then you're gonna look at the ingredients you have, and you're gonna say, okay, where could I add a little bit more balance to these ingredients? See how I keep coming back to that? Where could I add a little bit more balance to this? I've got the slight sweetness and sourness to the pomegranate, and I've also got that crunch from the nuts that also have a little bit of that fat for that mouthfeel. I need to go ahead and add something a little bit creamy because there's really nothing creamy here. Something creamy would just take it up a notch. Anytime you can add more variety in taste, texture, or temperature, it's going to make that salad more interesting. So just consider those things. How do I make it satisfying? Start with the base you love, start with the dressing you love, add something raw, something crunchy, and oftentimes something creamy as well. Now, in terms of our physical satisfaction, we also want to make sure if we're eating this as a meal that we have the main food groups as well. Okay, so you've already got your fiber here. Fiber is one of the most important things that's going to keep you full, and that's oftentimes why we eat salads. They're full of nutrients, and there's a lot of fiber in them as well. We've already got that with our kale, and then whatever veggie toppings you're going to put on. You also want to make sure you've got some fats in there as well, and typically that's from the dressing. We've also got our pecans on top there as well, and there's also a little bit in the goat cheese. And you also want some sort of a protein on there as well. This is one of the reasons why salads are oftentimes not physically satisfying, is because you don't have enough protein. So whether you want like a plant-based protein or you want an animal-based protein, my favorite thing to put alongside this salad is something fairly neutral. So my favorite thing to put alongside this salad is some salmon. So I will do a salmon that I pan sear with just a little bit of ginger, a little bit of garlic, and some sea salt. There is my oven singing at me. We're almost there, you guys. Once it stops singing, I'll go take the delicata squash out. So you want some sort of a protein. So the goat cheese here, it's gonna provide a little bit of protein, but it's probably not gonna, unless I'm gonna eat this whole salad myself, it's probably not gonna be enough to keep me full. Okay, we're getting the squash because it's probably not gonna shut up until I get it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the squash. Let's see how it is. Okay, all right, stop yelling at me. Goodness. Right, we're looking pretty good over here. This was 20 minutes at 375. I think it needs about 5 more minutes. Yeah, about 5 more minutes, but I'm gonna show you over here. And then I'll put it back in there for a couple more minutes, but you want it to be nice and golden. And then you also want it to be, okay, guys, by the way, don't do this at home. I have fingers of steel because of my years in kitchens. You can be safe and take a knife. I always go in the wrong drawer. You would think I would know by now. Take a knife, be safe with the knife. And if it slices through easily, then it's done. It should be crispy on one side, but you want it to be soft to the touch. So I'm gonna flip these over, put them in for 5 more minutes, and then they will be perfect. And like I said, this is gonna add a little bit of crispiness, a little bit of sweetness, and a little bit of creaminess. Adding something to your salad that is a contrast in temperature is one of those things that will take your salad to the next level. Instead of everything just being cold on top of your salad, especially in the winter time, add in those seasonal elements that are hot. So in the summertime, you can also add something that's warm without cooling the salad down so much, something like a warm steak on top. You could add roasted chickpeas, are a delicious way to add something that's a little bit crispy and also a plant-based protein. Or here, I've got the roasted squash. So I'm just kind of flipping these over here. They're nice and browned, and they'll be done in about 5 minutes. And then you can serve this right away, exactly how I created. Or you could get all of this ready, put it in the fridge, and then cook the squash up just before serving, and then serve it alongside your protein of choice. So like I said, roasted chickpeas would be delicious on this. My favorite thing to pair with this is salmon, because salmon it's fairly neutral, but it has a little bit of that, you know, those healthy fats in there that add a really nice texture along with it. You don't want anything that has like such a strong flavor. It's going to compete with the other ingredients, but a protein on top is what's going to help that be physically satisfying. I'm dropping things over here as per usual. So let's recap a little bit on our salad here. What do we have? All right, we've got our base that we love. We've got our dressing that we love. We have some sort of raw fruit or veggie. We've got something crunchy, something creamy. We're gonna add something with some texture to it. So that's gonna be the delicata squash. And then we ask ourselves, do I need to balance out the other ingredients? Okay, if the way that you added texture was by adding, like 3 different fruits, maybe we need something savory to balance it out, like maybe a cheese or a nut or something like that. If there's nothing crunchy on it and everything's kind of like the same texture, add something with a contrasting and opposite texture to add in some more of that mouthfeel and something that's going to be really appealing to your mouth when you eat. Because ultimately, the key here is that you are allowing yourself to make a salad that's going to satisfy you. It comes right back to those 2 different types of satisfaction. We have our physical satisfaction, so we make sure that our food has some sort of a fiber in it, some sort of a protein in it, some sort of a fat in it. Those are the things. Obviously, you want some carbohydrates as well, but usually get that from the fiber. But that fiber, fat, and protein, those are the 3 things that are going to make something physically filling, but it also needs to satisfy your taste buds. So if you're looking for a salad to satisfy you for a meal, look for these elements and then go ahead and make sure you add a protein on top of some sort, whatever feels good for you, so that you are actually staying full with your salad as well. So let me know if you guys, this is basically it. Other than the delicata squash, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share with you guys. I do want to let you guys know that I'm going to put up a poll in my stories after this. So I will share this whole recipe with you guys, the dressing, all of the ingredients, and the instructions. And then I want you guys to let me know what you want me to cook next. And if you have anything specific that you want to learn about, like do you want to learn how I sear my salmon? Do you want to learn more on how I roast veggies? I did have somebody ask how to roast veggies, so that's going to be on the docket soon. I'll teach you guys how to roast veggies so that they're crispy and delicious and not overcooked or undercooked, so we'll talk about that soon. So let me know what you guys want to make next. I'll come back on live next week and share with you guys. And then obviously the week after that is Thanksgiving, so I won't be on live, but I'll come back on in December and maybe we'll do some like holiday themed cooking. I love sharing these with you guys. If you didn't already see in my stories, the other really, really exciting thing I have happening in 2 weeks from tomorrow is my meal planner. The 3rd edition is coming back out. There's going to be 3 cover options this time, which is really, really exciting. And I gave you guys a little sneak peek to my personal favorite cover earlier today, so you can go ahead and check that out if you would like. And I think that's it. I'm out of breath because I was so excited talking. All right. Thank you guys so much for being here with me today. I think we're almost ready on the squash. So let me go ahead and grab the squash so I can share this with you guys one more time. Oh yeah, we're good. The chef instincts will come the more you cook. Oh my gosh, so delicious. Yeah, you just want it soft to the touch. You can even take it off of the pan and just let it cool down for a second and taste it. Oh my gosh, you guys, so tasty. So good. I hope this gave you guys some really great insight into how to create a satisfying salad, as well as my favorite autumn kale, pomegranate, pecan salad with a little bit of goat cheese on there. By the way, this is also on the blog if you want the printable version. Like I'll put it in my stories, but if you would like something that's printable that you can actually keep in your recipe binder, then you can go ahead to healthybalancedmama.com/blog and just look up autumn kale salad and this will pop up. All right, there There you go, friends. Super tasty, super delicious, and super satisfying. Oh, what is your favorite greens? I didn't see that question. I'm so sorry. So honestly, I love pretty much everything. If you want a lighter salad, I really like butter lettuce or romaine lettuce. And if you want something a little bit heartier, I really love kale or arugula. Those are my favorites. All right, friends, I hope you guys all have a beautiful rest of your day, and I will talk to you again next week.